possible. We do that work through education, collaboration, and advocacy. So for education, our largest program is our Blueprints College Access Initiative, where this school year we're working with 1,000 high school students and 200 college student mentors to help equip them to pursue post-secondary education. That can be community college, it can be a four-year university, it can be a technical certificate, it can be an academic degree. But we know in order to have a healthy economy for Alabama, to support this amazing regional development that we're seeing, where things like Railroad Park and Regents Field can happen, that we need to have an educated workforce. And that also supports great individual outcomes as well. We also do the Community Action Poverty Simulation. TC, who I work with, is this amazing Monopoly kit where you spend 2 hours experiencing a little taste of what it's like to be one of the 900,000 Alabamians who lives below the federal poverty line. We've been doing that every week this fall. We're going to reach at least 1,000 Alabamians this year, and I think we're going to break that. And then we also do collaboration with faith-based institutions and higher education institutions around poverty education. I do a lot of guest lectures on Wednesday nights, going out, breaking misperceptions about poverty and raising awareness of how many of our neighbors are in need. And we advocate for fact-based policy making. We advocate for increased funding for first-class pre-K. We're part of the End Child Hunger in Alabama task force with Lieutenant Governor Kay Ivey. We're part of the Bold Goals Coalition, and we believe deeply that we can accomplish more by collaborating and working together than we can by working in silos. And so I really thank you all for supporting our work tonight. I set what I thought was a bold goal of $50,000 for this dinner. It was a stretch for us, and we broke that by a few $1,000s, so thank you. I always want to do both money and mission at our events. I think this is a great testimony to that approach to our work, and thank you again so much for your support, every single one of you, for being here tonight. It's our biggest crowd by about a third, so thank you. I want to introduce an extraordinary young man that we worked with at Woodlawn High School, John Cross. John graduated at the top of his class. I started hearing about him from my former coworker, Kevy Martin, who was one of our Blueprints coordinators and is now a teacher in Georgia. And I kept hearing about John, hearing about John. And when I finally got to meet him, I understood why she had built such a strong relationship with him. So he graduated as the valedictorian of Woodlawn High School. He is now at UAB. And he's an education major, which I think is a great testament to the power that he sees for education and transforming lives. And I asked him to join us here tonight and give some testimony about his experience coming from Woodlawn to UAB here to Regents Field tonight. So please, John, come join us.
Hey everyone. Hey, I'm John. I really don't know where to start. I guess my public speaking class is coming into play here. Well, I recently graduated from Woodlawn High School in May. Graduated top of the class, valedictorian, a lot of hard work. My original major after graduation was mechanical engineering, but with Blueprints, it kind of stirred me away from that a bit. Basically, Blueprints is a college initiative program. It comes out of the high schools, starting with the 9th graders. But I wasn't introduced to it until my 12th grade year, lucky me. But the time that I did spend with the court, Kevy Martin, she's now in Atlanta teaching middle school. But the time that I did spend with her, she mentored me, probably the most helpful human being I came across so far. She came inside of our schools, helped me, a couple of my peers and their friends, and seeing the college acceptance process. She helped us apply to different outside scholarships, merit scholarships for the schools that we desired to go to. My original choice was Sanford, but after all the college scholarships I received, it was still a little bit out of my price range, $40,000 a year. So I settled with UAB, which was my second choice. I love it there. Wouldn't have it any other way. But Kevy, she was an angel sent to me. I don't know what I would have did without her, without Blueprints, period. I'm originally from Miami, Florida, so it was kind of hard for me to meet new people. But with being exposed to Blueprints, it basically opened up a window of opportunity for me. Lucky to be standing here today in front of all you guys. Let's see what else I can say up here today. Guys, got any questions for me? I will.
John is just one of more than 300 seniors that we've worked with in the 2 years that we've worked with seniors as part of the Blueprints College Access Initiative, and every single one of them has been accepted to a 2-year or 4-year institution. They've earned over $6 million in scholarships. They filled out their financial aid forms, and we work with them so that they can make the best choice about the college for them, so that they understand what they're getting into, the difference between loans and scholarships, the difference between nonprofit and for-profit colleges, because we want John to be able to graduate from college and be able to do anything he wants to do and not be saddled down with a bunch of loans. And so we learn so much by working with young people like John. You are the teachers, and so thank you. And I want to ask our dinner co-chairs to join me, Diane Mooney and John English, and they have really been a dynamic duo, and I want to thank them so much because they're two very different people. I've enjoyed working with them. They're just both extraordinary, and it has been my blessing to be part of planning this with them. So thank you.
Thank you, Christina, and thank all of you for being here tonight. Diane and I have the pleasure of introducing our guests, and I'm going to start off by introducing Cheryl. I first met Cheryl Morgan in 2010 when she led me and a small group of my Leadership Birmingham classmates on a walking tour that started on this street, First Avenue South at Alabama Ballet, and it ended basically right here at what was then very much still under construction Railroad Park. And I have to confess, I was more or less an art history major in college, and I was particularly interested in architecture and design, and I was a little starstruck. Cheryl really swept me off my feet, and so I decided that I really needed to get to know her better, and fortunately our paths have crossed quite a few times since then, and I have gotten to know her better, and I'm still starstruck. As most of you probably know, Cheryl is an architect. What you may not know is that earlier this year, Cheryl was elevated by the American Institute of Architects to its prestigious College of Fellows. This is an honor given to member practitioners who have made a significant contribution to architecture and society, and who have achieved a standard of excellence in the profession. And to give you some perspective of what this honor really is, there are 83,000 members of the American Institute of Architects, and only 3,100 members have been named to the College of Fellows. Cheryl is also a retired and distinguished member of the faculty at Auburn University, where she was the Gresham Professor of Architecture and Director of Auburn's Urban Studio in Birmingham. Cheryl is active civically, and her involvement includes service on the Birmingham Design Review Committee. What the facts in Cheryl's bio don't really convey, in my opinion, is that she is a very rare commodity. She is a great teacher, a great designer who enthusiastically applies her skills and experience to building stronger communities. Cheryl's contributions to Birmingham are best described, I think, in an April 2014 article that appeared in the Birmingham News, and if you'll bear with me, I'd like to quote some of that. Perhaps no single person has played a greater role in the direction of Birmingham's design over the last decade as Cheryl Morgan. As the director of the Auburn Urban Studio, Morgan had a hand in projects like Railroad Park, Red Mountain Park, and Sloss Furnaces, and worked on community initiatives from Inslee to Woodlawn and from Lakeview to Norwood. As a member of the Birmingham Design Review Committee, Morgan has become one of the most vocal and often the first to suggest changes to designs brought to the committee. Every historic and commercial revitalization district in the city falls under the committee's review, and Morgan has helped shape projects in all of them. In that same article, David Fleming, chief executive of Rev Birmingham, said it's hard to imagine Birmingham today without Morgan's efforts. Now I'd like to ask Diane to introduce our other guest, and Cheryl, if you'd come up, please.
Good evening. I'm Diane Mooney, and for 32 glorious years, I enjoyed working at Southern Progress Corporation. In 1977, after having worked there for only 2 years, I met a man named Don Logan, who had been transferred from our data processing center to our book division to become president of Oxmoor House. It was a small and struggling book division. His job was to either rescue our ailing book division or to fold our tents. And thankfully, he did rescue it and then some. In 1984, he became executive vice president of Southern Progress, and just 2 years before, we were 2 years CEO of Southern Progress. In 1992, Don was named president and chief operating officer of Time Inc., packing his bags for New York City, asking his bride, Sandy, to join him, and she was a little, I'm not sure you were sure about that move, but anyway, he took along with him all that impeccable business judgment, business acumen, and his broad vision for new ways to leverage magazine brands. Since Time Inc. acquired us, the suits on the 34th floor at Time Incorporated couldn't help but notice the beautiful numbers that we were turning in at Southern Progress. And even though it was a very dark day for us when Don left, there were some very positive changes about to take place when Don became president and chief executive officer of Time Inc. in 1994. His colleagues on the 34th floor all wanted to know his agenda. How can I get on his good side? What is that agenda? But the truth be told, all you needed to do was to be on his good side, was to deliver the numbers. It was always the numbers, and that's exactly what we did year after year, over and over again. Under Don's direction, Time Inc. experienced an unprecedented 11 straight years of earnings growth. That is phenomenal. In 2002, Don became chairman of AOL, Time Warner's media and communications group, overseeing AOL, Time Inc., Time Warner Cable, the Time Warner Book Group, and the Interactive Video Unit. You talk about a full plate. I don't know how he juggled that. When he retired in 2005, their loss became Birmingham's gain. And as he brought with him that experience, that financial acumen, that judgment, and that broad vision for our future, it was certainly Birmingham's gain. It was about our future. He has married two great loves, and that is sports fishing and publishing. And recently, he was named Distinguished American Sportsman for his contribution to sports, including his ownership of the Birmingham Barons, his service on the Auburn University Foundation, and his purchase of Bass. So many of you know that Don graduated from magna cum laude from Auburn, has served as a director of the Birmingham Chamber of Commerce, as co-chair of the Civil Rights Institute in Birmingham, and as a board member of the Magazine Publishers Association of America, the National Book Foundation, among so many other honors. He serves on so many for-profit boards and nonprofit boards, and I can't tell you how fortunate I feel to have been on Don's team. And I'm so proud and privileged to introduce him to you this evening, Don Logan.
Jack Ogle would know about that. He was the one driving them. Kansas, of course, I'm sorry. So,
No, that's fine. It's such an honor for me to be sitting here with you, and I'm going to say, you know, we're sort of in your home field advantage here tonight. And I'm going to, you know, before sort of toss the first question out at Don, I'd really like for all of you to think back 5 years ago. 5 years ago, if someone had said to you, we'd be sitting at Regent's Park after 2 amazing seasons, overlooking Railroad Park, would you have laughed?
yeah.
Would you have believed them? So I'm going to ask you all, pinch yourself. It's real. It's amazing. And of course that leads to one of the questions that I think we all want to hear about tonight. I certainly want to know more about it, is that decision to move the Barons to downtown. I'd really like to know more about your thinking about that, why it was important, how it happened, and then how do you feel about it now after 2 seasons?
That's a multi-part question.
Okay, start
But I
with,
guess that's legal.
Yeah.
You're making the rules, that's okay, I'll try and respond to each one as you ask them, but my memory fades, even though it may have been only 5 years ago. So a lot of the things I'll have to make up since I can't remember precisely what happened. Because nobody else out here knows the answer either, that I can get away with it hopefully, which is what I did during my entire career, Diane. They still haven't caught up with me yet. Yeah, when I came back, we moved back, she moved back before I did. She got tired of New York, and our house needed remodeling because being in your business, as you can understand, that it hadn't been torn up in at least 2 or 3 years, so it needed an overhaul.
that's what we call business development.
As she was back getting things ready, that I knew we were going to move back to Birmingham. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't want to sit on the front porch and rock, smoke cigars all day. Well, some days, but not all the time. And when the Barons became available, it happened that you may have read this piece of it, from the guy who had bought the Barons, lived in California, and when we were moving to New York, that the city manager in Hoover, a good friend of ours, Alan Pate, I told Alan that if the guy ever wanted to sell the team, let me know. And some 10 years later, I got a call out of the blue where he said that he still had my name and wanted to know if I was interested, and I said yes. And so we bought the team, and of course we were operating in Hoover at the time. And some of the developers immediately started coming around talking to us about moving downtown, because that has sort of been the trend in baseball, both at the major league level and the minor league level. And one of the guys who was coming out, Robert Simon's still here, is he already gone to bed? Robert? No, I guess he's gone. any event, Robert was one of the guys that was coming out talking to us about that, and we told him that we weren't interested in moving anywhere yet. We didn't understand the business of baseball, and the first thing that we had to do was to learn that, which we spent the next 2 or 3 years doing, trying to figure out the rhythms of the business and all the drivers of it that made it work financially. Because whether you moved or not, you had to make sure that the business was successful. A lot of times people jump in and start talking about doing things for various reasons, right thing to do, be great for the community and things like that. But it's not great for the community if the business fails. It's not great to come down and that we operate start a season or two and things fall apart, and that it's just not good for anybody. So we had to understand the business. So when Robert came in after 2 or 3 years and pitched the idea of moving downtown, we said we would listen. And so we put together a study and brought a feasibility study back and talked with, actually at the time, Larry Langford was mayor, and so that we had a conversation with him about the fact that we would consider moving downtown. We would listen. We hadn't committed and weren't committing or anything. And this was on Friday, and Larry wanted to have a press conference on Monday to announce it. We told him there were probably a few details that needed to be worked out. And we just kind of waited to say, don't worry about that. It's not a big deal. If you guys will come, we'll take care of the rest. So anyway, of course, Larry disappeared. And we
So
moved
to
on.
speak. So to speak, yes.
So to speak. And we moved on to the next phase. And as we looked at it, we thought about, does this make sense from a business standpoint first? If so, we talked about all the benefits that were good for the community, and we talked with Mayor Bell and the city, and they were very supportive of our coming and willing to step up and build a stadium, issue some bonds, and they had a lodging tax that they were going to use to retire the bonds. And so we said that we would come, provided we get the stadium we wanted, provided we could get the kind of lease that we wanted, lease being that we control the park. We are in charge here, and when there are other events coming, is that we still want to do that because we don't want the field torn up, because we can't have that. When you're connected with Major League Baseball, is that you can't have interruptions where someone decides they'd like to use the facility for something else. You can't have that. So we had an organization and a structure set up that prevented that from happening. And so then you went on to the next phase, is that if we build a park down there, will people come? And I can't tell you how many people said, no, they won't. We'll never come downtown. I'll never bring my children downtown at night to a baseball game. There were elected officials that made statements to that effect, and that said what an awful mistake we would be making, and that they would never ever support it. So you listen to all that, and you don't know exactly whether you're doing the right thing or not. But we also looked at what had happened at a number of other parks, made a lot of trips, and my 2 sons really were the drivers of this. I was there and involved in the discussion and decisions, but when you're trying to decide where your home is going to be the next 25 or 30 years, well, I knew where my home was going to be, and we were going to be watching baseball. That after you get planted, you don't really care that much about the season and the league. So it was really going to be their decision, and how, that they had to be comfortable with it. And as we looked, we decided it was the right thing to do. Everybody got excited about it. We believed that fans would come. We did our own little, what I call mother-in-law research, and asked some people, and that felt pretty good that if we had the right stadium, is that we could get people to come downtown, and we could get them to enjoy the experience here, and we could get them to come back again. So that was one step of it. Another was could the business community support us? So they did a little bit at Hoover, not a great deal. It was a long way out there, and there's so many people working the downtown area that they didn't really use the facility that much. The other part of it is we've gotten stale, that we're in the same location for 25 years. Whether you're the gallery or the summit, things change. You got to do something to freshen it up. And so we thought that we were hoping the business community would be excited about it, and we could build a facility that could sort of be a gathering place for the people here, and that every time that the law firms wanted to bring a new class in of recruits, that they'd want to come over and show them the ballpark, that any time that they were trying to recruit a new corporation into town or something, that this would be on the list of things to see. And so we were hoping that we could accomplish that and get their support. And then the third thing is that we were looking and hoping that the ballpark could serve as a catalyst for growth in the area. This, after Railroad Park, of course, is that there was already getting to be a lot of excitement about what was going on around here. And of course, the UAB sucked up every vacant lot that they possibly could and have been for a long time. They blame them. They've been wonderful for the city, and God knows where we would be without them. But in any event, is that we hope it would serve as a catalyst to attract people downtown, people that would live here, so that all of the things that this has become a thriving neighborhood over time, and that so we did it. The city stepped up. They did a great job in working with us in getting the kind of the facility and all of the things that we needed inside to be successful. I won't say it was an easy journey. It was very difficult along the way, that we weren't ready to open when we did, but we did. Anyway, and so it was the other things that happened. In 2 years here, there's been probably over 900,000 people that have come to ball games and or events.
Yes.
And a large number of those people are coming from Tuscaloosa, Gadsden, Anniston, Coleman. They're also coming from Shelby County. They're coming from over the mountain. And all those people who said they wouldn't come, I can't tell you how many people have stopped me at the ballpark and said, "You were right, we were wrong." That they were here. And we also said, when we were looking, I mentioned the business community, we wanted to make sure that we continued to get kids out here, Little Leagues, Boy Scouts. So Boy Scouts come out and spend the night here one night, show them the movie up here, G-rated movie, of course. And, Girl Scouts come out at the same time, and we determined we had to have them on separate nights. But in any event, that kids come and show up, and it's been a good thing. We attract a lot more people from around the community. It's a more diverse audience. We employ on game nights over 200 people, and they serve catering food, and they serve ushers, and so we've got a number of young minority people that are working here. We've got a number of seniors that are working here that are making the work at the park. A number of handicapped people that are here. So it's been a good thing from that standpoint, from an economic development. And then you know about some of the properties that are being developed. You can look out and see some of the cranes that are up and some of the projects that have been started. And there's a number of others that are under discussion and will probably be approved as well. So I guess if you look at it from all aspects of what we were trying to accomplish, get people used to coming downtown Birmingham, coming at night, eating safe, having the business community engaged, involved, a place where things are happening, and then the economic development around. It's been a success on all fronts. And the other thing I did mention is that we certainly wanted to make and have a home that we could feel comfortable in for 25 or 30 years, and that having a railroad park next door, having UAB here 65 years, we were kind of bounded in an area that we thought the neighborhoods would drastically change over that period of time, because this wasn't like moving a business where you're in an office, and if you decide that things aren't going well and the neighborhood's not right, so we'll just wait till our lease runs out, we'll go to another office, move somewhere else. You can't do this. You can't pick the park up and move it. So you're here, so you got to make a commitment. You got to figure out how it's going to work. So that's why I say it has to work from a business standpoint, financially, and all these other good things happen. I've rambled enough, haven't I?
Well, yeah, but tell me, how important was Railroad Park in your decision, and the fact that it had gotten up and running?
Well, Railroad Park was very important because, as I said, that we wanted to feel comfortable that we were moving into an important road and getting the Railroad Park here to begin with. you guys were a big proponent of it from the very beginning and worked very hard as it to make it happen. And again, it's one of those projects that, you know, the city of Birmingham can't do those kinds of things, and that somehow you all made it happen. And so we thank you for that. And so why don't you tell the audience how you made that happen?
Well, I think Urban Studio was part of a huge array of partners who worked on Railroad Park. Our job in the beginning, and I think most of you know that Railroad Park took 20 years to happen, but in the life of a city, that's the blink of an eye. Now, patience is not something we're good at, but the notion that early in the concept that great cities have great parks. When the Ealeton Land Company founded Birmingham years ago, they laid out what we now know as Lynn Park, Kelly Ingram Park, Marconi Park. They were in residential neighborhoods. We were a city of enterprise, so the idea of using land for park, I mean, you can look at the old land plots, and we had what's now Legion Field, but again in a residential neighborhood. So that evolution of the places we come together in community really wasn't part of that early concept of Birmingham. So we kept giving projects at Urban Studio where we looked out at this area of disinvestment and said, what would happen if we had a park there? What would happen if we brought citizens together there? So our real job at the beginning was just to bug people to come and look at the projects our students have done, to get elected officials, to get decision makers, to remember that this would be an important thing for our city. One of the real turning points early on, well, not early on, this is like 10, 15 years in, was a group of people who came together and formed a friends group. They called themselves Friends of Railroad, RR District, so that came out forward. So they were the Friends of the Railroad District, and many of them were people who drunk the Kool-Aid. They saw that this was important. I would like to think that some of them, well, I know that some of them were former Urban Studio students who had stayed in Birmingham. They wanted this reality to happen. And then, what some of you may not know is Mayor Kincaid, who really was sort of known for not doing anything, in fact, was the mayor who went to a Mayor's Institute. This is a National Endowment for the Arts conference where mayors go. It was established by an architect mayor of Charleston, South Carolina, Joe Riley. And he believed, Joe Riley, that the mayor of a city is its senior urban designer. The person who has the most responsibility for setting the vision of what is the quality of life in our city. And so Mayor Kincaid needed a project to go to the Mayor's Institute. Bill Gilchrist, Urban Studio, convinced him that it needed to be Railroad Park. We helped him get ready. He went, and he and his colleagues, other mayors, experts from around the country, he presented this idea to them of a railroad park in what looked like no man's land in the downtown of our city. And what they said is, yes, you need this park. So he came back with confidence that this was a good idea. He put city resources and staff behind it. That helped more influential leaders to join the Friends group. And then we began to move towards the realization of the park. And the excitement of pulling on a top-notch designer, Tom Leader. And there was also a period in time there when that critical turning point, when there was actually discussions about what's now a railroad park becoming a used car dealership. Yes. Oh. And this part of our city had been our automotive district. It was part of our history and our legacy. But the idea that this piece of our city could become something more was really critical. So I look now, I mean, there were so many other pieces, the Community Foundation, the Three Parks Initiative, the championing the potential for Birmingham to have a green component of what would be our next piece of history. And I think now some of the great success of our park, I'm an architect, I'm a designer, so I'm going to tell you, it is a great design. Yes. It's a design that I don't think you have to be a designer to walk into that park and know that it's beautifully designed. And at the same time, it's not a look but don't touch design. It invites you to participate. That to me is a signal of an extraordinarily good design. It's also been a place that has had very intense and very intentional programming. We've helped people come and learn how to use the park. Thank you, Railroad Park. Thank you, Camille. Yes. Because this is a new place for us to learn how to use our downtown. And we need help sometimes. It's not about a ball field where we play things. It's not just about green grass. It's a place where we learn to live in our city. And I think for me, if you stand on that 17th Street Plaza and you look back and see Vulcan, yes. And then you look at our skyline, we have never seen our city like that before. We had never seen that view of our city, which is an amazing view. And now, of course, Children's Hospital in the foreground and that link down the Ronald McDonald House. It's a really great piece of design. But the other part of it that I think makes it so successful, which we had hoped for, but has proven true, is it was neutral territory for our city. It didn't have baggage. It didn't have a history. It was residual part of our industrial heritage. So that place where we could invent its story was so important. And you see it played out. I mean, I walked from home. I live down the street. I've lived downtown for 17 years, and when people tell me it's not safe or scary, I just roll my eyes. I walked through Railroad Park coming here, and there were people of all varieties. And so that idea of neutral territory and a place where we could come together in community has been one of the most important parts of Railroad Park. And I look at Regents Field and baseball and the kind of sporting events is another place where we in our culture and in the South have found a place that builds community across socioeconomic lines, across ethnic lines, across cultural lines. And I think there's part of this same story that's playing in dialogue with each other. This place where we can come together without the normal scripts of what it means to be together in community. So I'm going to toss a question back at you. How do you see sports as a component of building tribes that are different than just where you grew up or what the color of your skin is or how much money your parents made? Is sports, and there's so many things about sports that now seem to be a part of your life. Is that part of what's important about sports, is building community?
Well, if you look back at the history of sports and the history here in Birmingham, you go back to the Negro Leagues and the Willie Mays and the Hank Aaron's and the people that have played baseball, and that was a part of their lives growing up, is that everybody looks for heroes. And, in our society, that sports has become that not necessarily all of them are really the kind of role models that we would look for, but there are still a few of them that are. And the thing about sports is I think that it teaches kids is to come together, to work together, to communicate with each other, and also for those that are pretty good at it, it gives them the chances to grow and develop, and that possibly get a scholarship that's a way out for many of them that they take. I'm disappointed, and I think in general across the country that baseball is not the same sport that it was 30 and 40 years ago in the inner cities. Is that for a long time it was kids are out playing baseball all the time, stickball, and then growing up playing it, and then there were so many opportunities is that through minor leagues, major leagues, and colleges that it was a big part of the kids' lives, and that it's not so much now, but we're working with minor league baseball, major league baseball, and some groups here in Birmingham. Edgar Weldon especially has been working with a group with some of the city schools is to try and add sports back in. He's not just focusing on baseball, but all sports. But obviously it's a part of the community, it's something for kids to do. It's much better than clicking on their video games and all that. Gets them outside, gets them engaged, and we think it's just is an important part of the community. And coming to the field, that's why we want young people to continue to come. That's why we work with the A.G. Gaston Boys and Girls Clubs, is that calls tickets available for kids to come out, and we have a number of school days where we encourage people to come out. So we hope that it's making some difference. And I should say something that we would have had this park if it hadn't been for UAB, their help swapping some parcels of land around. Mike Warren sitting over here helping us out, providing some parking, because otherwise nobody would have a place to park. But he hadn't made available some of his lots, and in exchange for that, we agreed to have fireworks every Friday night. So there was a win-win for everybody, and the kids certainly loved it. I was supposed to ask you a question now. Do you remember what it was?
I think you were going to ask me a little bit about the work we've done with towns and communities and the importance of planning in ending up with these kinds of results. So.
Yeah, that was it. And then I hope everyone realizes, listening to Cheryl and how passionate she is about all the good work that they've done over the number of years, and I guess the hardest thing that you really have to deal with, especially if you've got projects that take 20 years just to think about. My memory span is not nearly that good. That a month or two and I'm done. Got to move on to something else. But you've had so many opportunities, so many communities to work with, so many problems, so many issues. How do you set your priorities, and what have you done, and what are you really feel really good about some of the major successes that you've had in addition to Railroad Park?
Well, Urban Studio, my work with Auburn, we have worked with lots of neighborhoods and communities here in Birmingham. We work with 75 towns and communities across Alabama. And let me ask you guys a question. When I say fixing to get ready to, does anybody know what I mean? Yeah. So one of the things that we would always talk to communities, the neighborhoods we work with here, I think certainly it's not just in the South, but we're very guilty of always being fixing to get ready to. And for me, that's 3 layers of procrastination. Fixing to get ready to. And so a lot of the work we did with towns and communities was about how do you get a plan that helps you get past fixing to get ready to, but at the same time doesn't trap you in the just fixing mode. Because I think a lot of times we're just fixing things. And that's not the right approach either. I mean, it's always then going to be focused on the squeaky wheel or the loudest voice. So how do we back up and make a plan? Now, I can tell you, as a good Auburn person, out all over Alabama, one of the things I learned early on was, this was the point where I needed to quote Bear Bryant. This kept me out of a lot of trouble because I would remind people, as the incredible winning coach that he was, he would say, it's not the will to win that creates victories. It's the will to plan that will help you win. So that practice and planning and the notion that sometimes it takes a long time, but the idea that you look at the bigger picture and you really think about how do we get to where we want to be? How do we create the quality of life that we want? So one of the things that Urban Studios worked on over the years, one of the things that I'm continuing to work on is the idea of encouraging communities to have a plan. And that's physical planning, that's strategic planning, that's fiscal planning. They're all tied up together. Well, it's exciting to me that right now, in the context with all the things that are happening in Birmingham, we have a brand new comprehensive plan. And I'm on a committee that's looking at taking a document that, I swear to you, it's this thick, printed double side, and say, how do we take something like this, which is important and talks about things that are of value to us, and gets it down to something that is about moving from plan to action. But the other thing I can tell you about that plan is so many pieces of that are about things that this organization is championing. How do you move the community towards prosperity? Everybody in the community towards prosperity. So how do we focus on education and transportation and affordable housing and food security? They're all critical to the notion of where we are collectively going together. And right now, the thing that's so exciting to me is that for the first time in a very long time, we believe we can do it. I love the name change, Alabama Possible, because so much of what we've worked on over the years said, start with what's good. We have a form of planning we call assets-based that says, don't start with fixing the problems. And I've lived in San Francisco, Paris, France, not Texas, Oklahoma. I can't tell you how that happened exactly, but, and I'm in Alabama by choice now. I live here because it's a place that is evolving in an exciting way. But I can tell you from living in all those other places, they're all broken. Every place is broken if you want to start with what doesn't work. But those places don't tell you at the beginning what's broken. They tell you what's good. So our planning philosophy was always, let's start with identifying what's good and what works. And let's build a vision around that then frames the way we approach the things that do need improvement, the things that we're not proud of. How do we move those things forward? So we have a new comprehensive plan. We don't quite know how all of it's going to roll out, but it includes things like the land bank. It includes a lot of things that are going to be very positive for our city. So I'm very excited because one of the things that Railroad Park and Regents Field has told us is that we have a sense of possibility that we haven't had in a long time in our city. And that approaching from the sense of positive, to me, is one of the real secrets, the real tools of bringing everyone in our community to that sense of a better way of life. So when I think about aspiration and sense of possibility, the other thing that I think about is my admiration for the publications that you were so much a part of. Southern Living, all that group of publications that really made the sense of what was good in the South the feature and the focus